broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of Gun Guy Radio is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Welcome to episode 177 of Gun Guy Radio. This is a podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Jake Challand, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. Well, this week kicks off the second part of the two-part series on Benjamin Tyler Henry's invention, the Henry rifle. And this week, Evil Roy joins us, cowboy action superstar, to talk about the history of the Henry, his experience with the Henry, and he's even has a few signature models that Henry Repeating Arms, the new company, that they carry as well. So we'll talk about all that with Evil Roy here in just a minute. As you may know, Patriot Patch Company makes this episode of Gun Guy Radio possible, and we currently have a Firearms Radio Network t-shirt pre-order going on over at patriotpatch.co. That's right, you can pre-order your very own Firearms Radio Network t-shirt. You can pick from black or orange. We have all different sizes, small all the way up to 5XL. So we're going to gather pre-orders here, and then I think towards the end of August is when they ship. But that allows us to buy in bulk and save a little bit of money, and also allows us to do these really big sizes. Like, it's usually pretty hard in the past for us to do t-shirts and the 3XL to 5XL, but now we can cater to the bigger guys out there that are fans of the program. So I appreciate you guys heading over there, patriotpatch.co.
Do you shop on Amazon? How about your spouse? Does your mom? Does your company? Why not use the Firearms Radio Network's Amazon affiliate link next time you shop Amazon? Bookmark firearmsradio.tv/Amazon, or click through the Amazon link in the right-hand corner of firearmsradio.tv. Get it? Got it? Amazon it.
Special guest, Evil Roy, or otherwise Gene Piercy, right? Is that what friends call you?
Yep, Gene Piercy. Everybody thinks my name is Roy, but it's not.
Well, it's been dozens of episodes since we had you on, but you're back by popular demand to talk about the Henry rifles.
Great.
Why don't you fill people in a little bit on your experience in the shooting world, for those that don't know your cowboy action shooting status? And
Sure. I didn't actually start shooting competition until I was 50. In the past, when I was younger, I raced motorcycles and I did martial arts stuff and, all that kind of stuff. And I just got too old to do that. And we actually had kept our grandkids for a year. And during that time, we actually went out I lived in Durango, Colorado at that time, and went out to the gun range just to watch. And they were having a cowboy action match. And so a few months later, when the kids went back home, I decided that would be something I could do as I got older, and still have a lot of competition. So anyway, we just started shooting it. And, I'm kind of one of those guys that can only do one thing at a time. And I got very interested in it and really worked hard at it. And I won a lot of matches. I won overall world and national championship. And then I did the same thing in a wild bunch stuff with the 1911 when it came along. And so I've won, 27, 28 world or national championships, including the overall, and gotten to travel a lot. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that, wants to go somewhere just to go. But in the process of doing this, we've been all over teaching schools and shooting, and actually taught schools in Finland and Norway and Canada and New Zealand, and just places I probably never would have gone just for a trip. And then of course turned into a business, which was never planned. My real business at the time was I manufactured a structural system to build concrete arches and domes that I patented, 30 some odd years ago. And those were sold to people mainly to build earth sheltered homes with. And so that was, I guess, my real life. And Evil Roy just came along, just mainly because I got interested in shooting a lot. And the name sounded good, I think, as far as being a business. And I was very visible. In fact, I'm probably more visible now. I'm 72 years old. But I've been around so long and got my name on so many different products and stuff. I'm probably better known now than when I was really winning, lots of matches. I was pretty competitive up through about 61 years old. I could shoot with just about anybody in the sport. And then at 70, I won the overall national in the Wild Bunch. Is probably about as old as anybody's ever won a national event overall. And so, but at 72, I can tell the difference already. So it's a different experience getting old.
Well, we're talking about something older than even you, the Henry rifle, which was designed in 1860. So, Gene, what can you tell me about the invention of the Henry rifle?
Well, yeah, this is something that's actually older than me, which is kind of rare anymore, but it's a real interesting subject. Henry rifle, the names associated with it were, of course, Oliver Winchester, but Smith & Wesson was a part of the effort. They designed a self-contained cartridge, and were kind of working on firearms, and that turned into volcanic firearms, and then Smith & Wesson left that. The company went broke. Winchester, who was a clothing manufacturer and the biggest investor, I guess, bought, the company, or took over the company, I guess is more what it was, and hired a guy named Henry Benjamin Henry, to develop a lever action gun that they work on a volcano. It kind of came from the volcanic thing. So you got Smith & Wesson, Winchester, Henry, all associated with these early efforts. And Henry developed what became the rimfire cartridge, which is the granddaddy of the 22s and all that, and that became the 44 Henry cartridge. And then they developed the Henry rifle. And then from that, I think there's only like 13,000 of them made. But from that, the first actual real Winchester was the 1866. And that basically was a Henry that was modified to the loading gate and fore-end and, changes. And of course, then the Winchester line of lever actions grew from that original Henry to, still today. They still make lever action rifles.
So this is kind of the granddaddy of all the lever action rifles.
Yeah, it's the first. It was the first successful repeating rifle, I believe, the Henry. And, you can still buy the rifle today. In fact, the Henry Repeating Arms makes the original rifle as well as, lots and lots of 22 lever actions, but, the lever action itself kind of came from that. And there's still lever actions are still very, very popular today. Lots of companies make them, including Browning. They make one. I've got a BLR, which shoots 308 rounds, and Sir Marlin, and, lots of companies made that. But it's a real interesting history to read because of the people involved, and firearms history is kind of interesting because you see somebody did this and then somebody added to it and did this and whatever, and then it became this and whatever, but it's real logical to see how things developed. And in the case of the Henry and Winchester, like I said, the people involved were some of the real pioneers. Smith & Wesson obviously is still a company, Winchester still a company, and all that. So it's real interesting reading.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the Civil War history of the Henry, but first let's talk about the functionality of it, kind of how it worked. It had it's kind of a unique design where I guess most notably the cartridges load through the buttstock.
No, actually the cartridges, and I think the Spencer did that.
Oh, okay.
The Spencer had a lever and you worked the lever, which fed a cartridge from the buttstock, and then you had to cock the hammer. And, of course, the Henry has a tubular magazine like a .22 rifle and most modern lever action. So with the volcanic, I believe the early volcanics had kind of a finger lever, and I think the first ones were actually a pistol version. Anyway, you worked the lever with had two finger holes or something in it, and that fed a cartridge. Not exactly sure how the cartridge fed, but anyway, the Henry, when you lever the action, it brings a cartridge out of the magazine tube, and again, it's under the barrel, just like at most .22s, and it chambers around, but when it does that, it cocks the hammer as well. And then if you fired it, in the process, when you work the lever, it extracts the old round, feeds the new round, cocks the hammer, and all you got to do is close the thing and pull the trigger. So that system is still very much in use today.
So yeah, I had my rifles mixed up. So the Spencers came into being around the same year, I believe.
I think they were about the same. The Spencers were very widely used in the Civil War. The Henry came out in 1860, and so I think it seems strange, to look up the production numbers, but I think there were only 13 or 14,000 Henrys ever made. You'd think there had been thousands upon thousands, but there weren't very many of them. Now, the Spencers and all that kind of stuff, which were very plentiful in the Civil War and all that. They made, I don't know how many of those, they made tons and tons of them. But the Henry in Civil War was just a prize to own. And, the thing held, I think, 13, 14 rounds, 15 rounds, I think, plus one in the chamber. So we load that thing up. They in the Civil War, that saying is you load on Sunday and shoot all week long or something like that. I can't remember. But it was a huge advance over. There were people still using muzzle loaders in the Civil War, lots of them. And so to have that thing available was just unreal. But they, scouts and all that are the guys that used them mostly, and the Confederates, the Southerns, they didn't really have any unless they captured them. And then the ammo was special, 44 rimfire. So you could have a rifle, and ammo was pretty hard to come by. So it wasn't a significant weapon in the Civil War, but it was important that it was there. But having one was that was just a badge of success or honor, whatever you think, just having one of the things, because it was so far advanced.
So I guess maybe a little more notably, the Henrys helped win the West, quote unquote.
Yeah, it became important in the West. Of course, like I said, they only made 14,000 of them. But then that became the 1866, which they made just tons of, and the other rifles. But back then, if you got a rifle, let's say you bought a rifle in 1860, 1862 or whatever, you might own that thing the rest of your life. Well, today it's sort of the same thing. But they didn't, money was scarce and everything, so it didn't, when they came out in the 1866 or the 73 or whatever, a lot of these people didn't just go out and buy the new one. Sure, if you had the money, absolutely. But, that thing was around forever. Wagon trains and all the stuff that was going on, the Henry continued to be a very prized possession because of its firepower, and just having the thing was kind of a badge of honor or something. But it was very, very visible throughout all the development of the West, just because it started in 1860. And like I said, they didn't make that many of them, but they were out there for a long, long, long time.
And it was even a prized possession among some of the Native Americans, the Sioux and the Cheyennes. I think the Battle of Little Bighorn, the Sioux were even armed with Henrys.
Yeah, unfortunately for Custer, there were evidently quite a few of them. And the U.S. military stayed with a single shot, the Springfields. I think let's see, I can't remember, the trapdoor, I think, was the issued gun then. But anyway, they were single shot. The military sometimes it's kind of slow to respond to technology. And it was, if you single shots better and they're more reliable and you don't waste as much ammo. And, same thing when they went from a bolt action to a semi-auto, fully auto, in more modern times, but that was not an issue. Again, unfortunately, the Indians had some of them. I don't think there was tons of them out there, but enough. You have one or two guys out there with a 16-shot repeating firearm. You can lay down a lot of fire, as far as keeping people's heads down and, causing a real problem for people shooting single shots. So it was an important firearm through the whole development of the West.
Right. It was almost like the squad automatic rifle of its day.
Yeah, it'd be like today, if you're in a situation where you needed firepower and had a bolt-action rifle and somebody showed up with an M16. That's probably a really good comparison. In fact, it's a huge, huge advantage. If you're backed off at 500 yards, okay, it may not be important, but when you're at close range and what a lot of people don't realize is firepower, like a machine gun or something, one of its big function is to keep people's heads down so they can't shoot back. And when you have a hail of bullets coming, from a repeater or something, it's a big deal. Whereas I think back then, they were probably a lot better shots. Ammunition was scarce and all that, and probably had more hits per round, that was shot. But it's still a big deal. I mean, if you're up there shooting and when your other guys are reloading and you're still shooting, that's an advantage.
So what has been your personal experience with Henry rifles? Have you shot any, owned any?
Well, in modern times, I certainly don't have, the originals are, I think I read somewhere about the cheapest one of those you could ever find would be $6,000 or something. And that's probably a hunk of junk or something. But the modern guns, the ones I've had experience with, Henry repeating arms, they make a copy of the original gun. And of course, the Henry rifle itself is not what Henry Firearms now, repeating arms, sells the most of. I mean, they sell thousands upon thousands of 22s and lots of 357s and all that stuff. But a true Henry, my main exposure to them through cowboy action shooting, because Uberti makes replicas, and there's quite a few of them around. Now, it's not as popular in cowboy action shooting as a 66 and 73, mainly for the fact that you have to relocate your hand as you fire the gun, because the follower on the magazine tube comes down the barrel as you fire. It's as you get less cartridges, it gets closer to your hand, and so you have to relocate your hand if you're firing, say, 10 rounds. And the barrel gets hot because it doesn't have a forend on it. But there's still, if you go to a cowboy action match, you still see a lot of them. A lot of cowboy action shooters are real interested in history and whatever they consider to be the Old West. So that can be anything from a Henry through, 94s, 1894s, or whatever. And so my biggest exposure to them actually as replicas would be in cowboy action, which you do see quite a few of them. And again, I think Uberti, until Henry repeating arms started making them in the last few years, that was about the only source for them. So there's way more been made in modern times than there ever was of the original.
Well, and what are the modern ones chambered in? Because you can't get, the 44 Henry rimfire is, long obsolete, right?
Yeah, the rimfire went away a long time ago, but I would say most people shooting the Henry are shooting 45 long Colt. 4440 is a very popular caliber. 4440 in the Old West was an extremely popular caliber. But in the cowboy stuff, definitely 4440, 45 long Colt. And also, they didn't make the 45 long Colt, and I'm not even sure Henry was ever chambered in a 4440 even. I'm not sure about that, but I don't believe it was. I could be wrong about that.
Are those both pistol rounds as well? Would you describe those as? Back in
the Old West, ammo was a big issue because it was very hard to get, very expensive. And the most popular caliber actually in the Old West was 44-40. And in the military had 45 long Colt pistols. So they didn't interchange with what was in the rifle. But your average cowboy, whatever, would want a 44-40 or even a 38-40 because that would work in both Colt, definitely chambered pistols for that. And, of course, the rifles were chambered for that. So that if you were out, way off somewhere and had one round, I would think most people back then would have chosen a 44-40 and a matching revolver, to match the rifle. That was very popular. And back then they had saddlebag loading tools. I don't know if you ever seen a Lyman 310 loading tool back years and years and years ago. It was a little thing that looks like a pair of pliers, sort of. And you could size cases and all that. You see them in antique stores, not the 310, but the Cowboys had a version of that, and it was again like a kind of a funny-looking pair of pliers. You didn't screw a die in. You put a case in there, and it's sized, and then it punched the primer out, and you put a new primer in, and poured powder in, and then used another part of the tool, I think, to put the bullet in, so they could melt lead. And if they had any powder with them, they could actually load themselves, up new rounds. And that was pretty popular. But, the guy that went into the general store in Dodge City or something and bought cartridges, those were expensive. And the cowboy may not have been anywhere near Dodge City. So, that was always an issue. But again, I think 44-40 by far would have been the most popular cartridge. But I don't think it actually would have covered Henry until modern times. The new Henry is 44-40. But again, I actually didn't look that up to see if 44-40 was ever offered, during its build, because it went out of production, I think, before 1866 when the 66 Winchester came out. And it was definitely chambered in 44-40.
Wow, that is so fascinating, that thinking about those cowboys just out in the middle of nowhere, and you can't just go to the store and buy ammo. You got to pick up your spent cases and reload your own out there in the field.
Yeah, and try to find lead. And of course, the thing is, if you had any black powder, then you had powder. So it was probably not as hard to get powder because, to now, there's so many different powders available. But back then, black powder, of course, there's different grades of it. But if you had a pound of black powder, you could probably keep yourself in business if you could, scrounge up some lead somewhere. And I don't know how they did that. Maybe just rounds that, picking up the lead that they'd shot and found or, whatever. But it was I actually had one of those tools probably 30 years ago. I'd found one at an antique shop, and I had as a kid a 310 tool, which I loaded 38 specials for when I was 14 years old or something. But it was real similar. I know that's where the design for the 310 came from, the Lyman tool. But I'd, talk to people, and they said, yeah, these guys carried those in their saddlebags, and, if they needed to reload a few rounds, they actually had a bullet mold and a little dipper, and they load up a few rounds at a time. Because, back then they probably didn't shoot much at all as far as the pistols. The rifles, if they were hunting with them or whatever, they'd probably shoot some rounds of that, but still the round count per year would probably be, I would think, pretty low unless they were actually shooting them in a war or something.
I suppose they could have got lead from a lot of common, manufactured. I would think back then there was quite a few things that were made out of lead that probably shouldn't have been made out of lead. Like maybe. Yeah,
I think probably so. Yeah, I imagine there were sources of it. Well, there had to be, or they wouldn't be carrying around the casting stuff. But I'm not exactly sure where they got all that stuff. But the other thing is, you could take lead out of any bullet or whatever, anything spent that was fired, or even something that wasn't fired, and make something to fit your gun. If you had the little loading the blocks, to pour the stuff in. I went blank there as far as to call it, but you melt the lead and you have your little thing and you pour it in your blocks to load the bullets one at a time over the campfire. That was what was done a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, to think of these as there's a real resurgence of like pistol caliber carbines today, and you think back then, and everyone carried a pistol caliber carbine, and they would try to carry them same caliber for their sidearm as they did their long rifle.
Yeah, and another reason for that was the action of the Henry and the 66 and the 73. They would handle the pressures of a 4440 and today a 45 long Colt, mainly because the metal's better today. But back then, the 4440 was pushing what the action would handle. They're toggle link action, and it's real weak compared to modern actions. In fact, when the higher powered cartridges came along, like in the 3030, they got up to that stuff. Then the 1892, which I think Browning, of course, he invented everything, but Browning, he didn't invent the Henry, but those have locking lugs that come in and lock the bolt. When the lever comes up, it locks the bolt in place. So they'll handle, I've had one in 44 mag and actually shot it a little bit in competition for, I wound up with the 73s, but they're very strong. And of course the 94, you can have 30-30s with it and all. So, but the other reason, like I said, those lower power cartridges, that's all the rifle would handle. You got to remember, it started out as a rimfire 44 with a 200 grain bullet and 15 grains of black powder or something. Wasn't much. So if you put anything much more than that, the rifle wouldn't handle it.
Yeah, that's right. All these old cartridges were black powder back in the day. So that led to more maintenance needed on the rifles.
Yeah, I mean, you had to keep them clean and all that, and and getting back to the cavalry and all that, shooting say a 66, in Custer, the trapdoors, I'm pretty sure, were 45-70s. Those were honking cartridges and way more powerful. But for anti-personnel stuff at fairly close range, those lever action rifles are real good. In fact, I'll tell you the truth, I've got all kinds of modern guns, ARs, and I dearly love them. But if you take a lever action, a 16-inch lever action rifle today in 357, I'll guarantee you, if somebody's coming down your hallway, that's about as good as it gets. You get out to 100 yards or something, or in my view, 50 to 75, you're better off with a modern cartridge. But for something to keep around the house, a lever action rifle, again in 357 or 44 mag, whatever. It's a very safe gun to have as long as you don't lever it. There's usually nothing in the chamber. If you want to leave it safe, you just leave the lever open, if you don't know anything about unloading them or whatever. But I'm telling you, a 357 hollow point out of a rifle barrel is just bad news. It's probably really, in a home situation, it's probably as good as about anything you can get, other than maybe a shotgun. But in a way, I would rather have the carbine because it's less recoil, probably more shootable and all that stuff. But, regardless how you think about it, it's a very, very good anti-personnel round out to, some limited distance.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the modern Henry Repeating Arms Company. And, you mentioned that they offer a really cool reproduction Henry rifle. Have you had any hands-on time with that one?
I have not shot that one. It looks exactly like the original in the picture. And in fact, I just read that I think they just came out with an iron frame version of it, which, Henry had one as well, the original Henry. So I think they've come out with something like that too. But I think it's pretty much true to the original except for the caliber. And I think that was a very smart move on it. I think those are really hard to get. They sell lots of them.
Well, and I guess you have some Evil Roy branded rifles over there at Henry Repeating Arms, right?
Yep. I've known Anthony Imperato, the guy that owns the company, for quite a few years, and I used 22 rifles in some of my schools. I didn't use them, every one of them, but he had given me 2 or 3 of them to use a long time ago. And so I always kind of stayed in touch with him, and he's just a very nice guy. So anyway, I called him, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. I said, why don't we do an Evil Roy 22? And he said, okay, let's do that. So, I designed it and all that stuff, and we talked back and forth about what it ought to look like. And, I sent it back, and their shipping department lost it. And so by the time they located it and all, he was on to other things, and we just kind of dropped it. So anyway, early last year, I called him back, and I said, why don't we talk about that again? So he said, yeah, he was real interested in doing that. So he, says a lot about it, and he let me design it. Pretty much, I said, I'd like to do something that I would want, for me, perfect. And of course, he had a lot of input. Definitely, it's his company, but he pretty much let me design a rifle. So what we wound up with was a 16-inch octagon barrel. And Anthony and I talked about color, so it's silver, receiver with a silver barrel band. And then we couldn't decide on what lever to use, and the big Luke or the standard. I kind of like the standard better for competition, and all that stuff. But anyway, for whatever reason, he sent it out, the prototype for me to look at, and it had a large loop lever on it, and it just looked perfect. So that's what we went with, and it's taken off. I think it was introduced last year, probably about this time, June or July, something like that. And it's selling real good. In fact, they just announced the 22 Magnum version, which, as we speak, should be about ready to ship or is shipping. I don't know. But it's just a handy little gun. It's about 34 inches long, 5.5 pounds, just absolutely handles perfect. I put a intermediate length stock on it, which turns out is exactly the length of my competition gun. I'm 6'2", but you don't need a really long stock, and maybe for hunting or something, yeah. But for a quick little gun, you want a kind of a short stock, and this works out pretty well for a youth gun. In fact, it's the same length stock as Henry puts on their youth gun. I think it's a 13-inch length of pull, and most guns come with at least 13.5, 14-inch length of pull from trigger to the end of the stock. And so this one, it's just perfect. It balances, handles, it's very accurate. It's got a great barrel on it, marble sights on it. And one of the things I really wanted, since I'm an old guy, is the receivers grooved for scope mount. So it's the 22 3/8 inch thing, but you can buy that mount, and then you can adapt it up to, inch or, whatever you can put on it. So it's just turned out real good, and I'm really happy with it. And, of course, I'm extremely happy to be working with Henry, who's probably about as well-respected company as there is. They just run a great company and build really good stuff. It's all made in the U.S. And, I'm just thrilled to be a part of it. I can't believe it. We didn't know if we'd sell any of them, but it's really taken off.
That's it's a great-looking rifle. That's really good to hear. And the cool thing I always liked about the lever action 22s is that you could shoot 22 short or 22 long rifle in them. And I think 22 short has a lot of fun applications. Many people probably don't think to use that round, but I'll use it just to shoot rabbits or ground squirrels and stuff. It's quieter, it's a little more challenging. It's fun.
Yeah, and you can make a case for lever action. I mean, I've got semi-autos, 22s, and love them. They're great, but the lever action is pretty forgiving of the kind of 22s you shoot. Some semi-autos can get a little finicky about the ammo, not just 22s, semi-autos in general. But this, for a demo, I mixed up every round I had. They were all 22 long rifle, but they were from all kinds of different manufacturers, and just load them in there. I think this particular gun holds 12 rounds, and just bang, 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 bang. It'll shoot about anything you can stuff in. I haven't tried it with 22 shorts, but they say it feeds fine. They list it, to be suitable for that. So I really like it. It's just nice. And the 22 mag version is going to be what I'm going to put a scope on. I live out in the country, and it'll be good for coyotes and predator stuff. Good to stick on my little 4-wheeler when I go out and run around taking care of stuff. And it's just a fun little gun to shoot. It really is.
The other cool gun I think Henry has in their lineup is their 4570, that big old buffalo gun, right?
Yeah, they make a lever action version that is 4570, and all their stuff is just very popular. I'm not sure, but I think they make like 350,000 rifles a year. they're one of the biggest rifle manufacturers in the United States.
Wow.
And, they sell lots of 22s, but, they got 357s, they got the 44 mags, in fact, I've got a 44 Magnum big boy, and then they got the 4570 that came out with, the copy of the original Henry rifle. They're really smart business people. I don't know if you know the history of that company or not, but it's just the American dream. This guy, Anthony's father had bought a company in New York. It had been in business for years, selling police pistols and making holsters and that sort of thing. And Lou, his dad, expanded that and made it bigger. And then in 1996, not that long ago, Anthony, took over the company or whatever. And somehow or other, I don't know how I even thought of it, he got the right, he bought the rights to the Henry name. And that's just about as big a stroke of genius as I can even imagine. But he took it from that in 1996 to making over 300,000 rifles a year. It is just unbelievable. And, they've got a great reputation. Their customer service is good and all that. And, I'm sounding like a commercial for them, but I suppose I am. But it's just a good company. And, Anthony is involved in it day to day. I mean, some of the times if you have a problem, he'll call you and take care of it. But at the SHOT Show, he didn't go to the SHOT Show, but at the NRA show, he's like a rock star. I mean, you can't hardly get near that booth. There's people up there just wanting his autograph, wanting to talk to him, get pictures made with him and all that. But he's really got a neat company and neat products. And they're not real expensive to buy. The 22s not. Now the Henry, I think, I don't even know what Henry sells for, the original copy, but it's not a cheap gun. But most of this stuff's very affordable. But it's just a neat story. The thing comes from New York of all places. I think they got a plant in Wisconsin now, and I do stuff. I do a thing with HAVA, Honored American Veterans of Field thing, and Anthony gives a presentation, military version of the 22 away for that, and it's just neat. It's fun talking about it. But he's just an American success story, which I think's the neatest part, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are too, Gene. I mean, what?
Well, on a very minor scale, a very minor scale compared to Anthony or a lot of other people. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I am. I'm doing something I want to do.
So, let's talk a little bit about what you've been up to since we last talked. Are you still shooting a bit of cowboy action?
I am. I'm not shooting as much right now. We've had a little bit of health problems in the family and all that stuff, so we've been taking care of some of that stuff. And so I haven't really, for years I shot several matches a month. And in fact, for quite a few years, I shot probably 2 major matches a month. And, when I lived in Durango, I live in Texas now, but I live in Durango, I'd be 1 week, I'd be over in California, and 2 weeks later, I'd be over in Dallas shooting. And for me, it was because I liked it and, wanting to get experience. I went where the good shooters were. A lot of people won't go where the good shooters are because they don't want to get beat. But, if you're going to get good at something, you want your little rear end pounded by the best guys, not the worst guys. And so, getting beat by then China Camp, who was just totally unbeatable at that time. Wherever he was at, I tried to go. And it got to be kind of a joke for a while that I was stalking him, because every time he turned around, there I was, But, it was fun. And I don't travel or even try to do that anymore. I'm 72, I'm older and all that stuff. And but, we still like to shoot a lot, but we don't get quite as much right now. So we're not as active, still having fun with it.
Are you still doing your shooting school, the Evil Roy shooting school?
Yeah, I have. I live on 50 acres, and I've got a range on it, and I'm not doing any of the big schools anymore. I used to do them at the Nationals every year and did at the World Championships for quite a while. And I used to go to, wherever. But right now I take private students, and, if somebody calls and they got a big enough class somewhere, I'd consider going. But, I did schools for a long time, shoot a lot of them I didn't make any money on, just we'd wind up going somewhere. And, of course, it was always good for business because people would buy things from me for years. But anymore, if I travel, I want to make a little money because I actually don't want to travel. I just don't have quite as much energy as I did. So, but I have people coming here pretty regular. It's easy to get to. We're about 2 hours southwest of Fort Worth, so it's pretty easy to get to. And I'm just. It seems like I have more opportunities and stuff now than when I was winning all the matches, and it's just because I've been out there a long time and and been successful at it.
So what do you take a person through? Let's say I come down there, I'm completely, as far as cowboy action goes, I'm completely green. I've never shot a cowboy match or anything like that. So what would you take me through if I came down there for some training?
Well, I like to do 4-hour days because it's just what I'm trying to do is get information out. I don't care how well you shoot when you leave here. What I care about is the information that you leave with. And, a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that if you come here in 2 days, you're just going to be a great shooter and you leave. That's not possible. That takes lots of effort and practice and all that. However, the information on how to become a good or great shooter or whatever is the important part. So we would work on the very first thing I do, and I want people to have their own gear when they come. I don't want to rent. I don't have enough gear that I keep to loan guns and as a liability thing. I don't do that. So you basically, I'd probably talk to you a while and advise you on what to buy or sell it to you, or, whatever the case may be. You'd show up out here and I would want you to have your leather, which is a real important part of the sport, 2 holsters, a shotgun belt, and that. And then the firearms, which is 2 pistols, rifle, and a shotgun. And what we do is we sit down and we talk about maybe an hour or two to start with about different things and loading and reloading and the game and how it's played and strategies and all that. And the first thing we do when we go shooting, we shoot 1-inch dots. And it doesn't sound really spectacular, but you get back about 7 yards, and it's one of those like a hole-in-one in golf. You can do it as many times as you want, but the object is to put every round through one hole, which you're not going to do. And so it really is a real good practice for trigger control, sight alignment, everything. And so that's the first thing to do, and then we'll start working on steel after that. That's on paper, on doing multiple shots and all that, and then go to the rifle, manipulating the rifle. Cowboy action is all shooting, but I think it's one of the hardest action sports there is. I've shot a little bit of IDPA and IPSC, not a lot, but just a little. But the cowboy stuff is very difficult because you've got to manually operate the gun, and that's a good part of what determines how you do, because you can be the most accurate shooter in the world, and if you don't know how to run the lever on that rifle real efficiently and quickly, you're not going to do any good. Same thing with a pistol. You've got to cock the pistol. That means your thumb's in the way of your sights. So you can't see the sights when your thumb's cocked on a pistol. So all that stuff goes on. And then we talk about loading the shotgun. The guns are all staged empty. So you have to pick them up and load them 2 at a time or 1 at a time, whatever you do. And then probably one of the most important things is the gun handling, transitioning from pistol to rifle or rifle to shotgun or whatever, because you can pick up so much time, because on every single stage you typically fire 2 pistol, rifle, and a shotgun. So how efficient you are with those transitions and changes and all that's important. And then we talk a lot about the mental game, and the mental game with cowboy stuff's about half the game. With position rifle shooting, the mental maybe 9/10 of it. But with cowboy, you got so much going on physically that you have to do, that I think the mental stuff is fully half the game. And so we spend a little bit of talking about that. To get the full course of that, you'd have to go see somebody like Lanny Basham or something and spend several days with him. But there's some basics there. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to have a skill level and believe in that. And then, you just got to think about things correctly. It's very difficult, very, very difficult to do it well.
Oh, very cool. And if people are interested in that, they go to evilroy.com?
Yeah, evilroy.com. It's got the information on it. They can always call. I think people are sometimes reluctant to call. I think I'm probably, busy constantly during the day, and I've always got time to talk to people. But they can get on there and take a look, or just give me a call. Either, it doesn't matter. Very cool. And then I guess you got a new holster deal going on, too. You want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah. Years ago, I kind of figured out what worked real well and did a lot of designing and stuff and had them made and appealed mostly to the cowboy market. And I want to get those out to a bigger audience. And so I hooked up this company called COWS, COWS, Classic Old West stuff. And they make lots of holsters. They make really good stuff, but they typically have gone to the lower price stuff. They sell 8,000 to 10,000 holsters a month. It's just unbelievable how much stuff they sell. And they sell clothing and all that stuff. So anyway, I hooked up with them very recently. So we don't have stuff out right now, but within the next month or two, we'll have the cowboy stuff, which is going to be the top end of the stuff, but we'll also, I think, have versions of that are not steel-lined holsters, say, and, all the stuff that goes into making a rig that's, fairly expensive down into, anybody who would buy a single action or even a double action or an automatic, the semi-auto. These guys, they supply Ruger with stuff. They supply, I think, Sports Guide, and they just sell stuff everywhere. And so they were kind of wanting to do, they basically said, we want an upgraded version with a name on it about the time I called them. So that was pretty good timing, So I'm pretty excited about that, and it's something new to do. And, I want to get them out everywhere. But the cowboy action market, as big as it is a very, very small market compared to, the people that buy, just go in and buy a Ruger or a Colt or Uberti or Cimarron, any of that stuff. So what I want to do is get on, the guys that buy just, they're going to go out and shoot cans with it or whatever and practice and just want a holster. Well, they don't need a $400 rig. They need something that'll work, but they're not going to, they're just not going to pound it and beat it up like we do in competition stuff. They just need something to carry a gun around in that works. So that's kind of, we're going to work on that end as well as, still trying to do the cowboy action stuff.
Oh, and I see that they're the clothing, COWS are the clothing supplier for the AMC show Hell on Wheels, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, they've done lots of stuff. They supply holsters to, I think I was talking to them about Lonesome Dove and that stuff. We supplied, I think they did Gus's holster, and so they've done a lot of stuff. They're very well connected to that stuff. And I went to El Paso. They're in El Paso, so for us, I thought, well, that's in Texas. Hell, El Paso. I live in north central Texas. It's a 9-hour drive. I could almost be back in Durango in that amount of time. So anyway, we drove over there once, got talking. I figured it'd be good to meet them and all. And they're real nice people and people I think I can work with. And they want to do good stuff, and they're pretty well known in their own right, really. And I think I just kind of wandered in at a good time because they got some of their customers. They want upgrade stuff. They can sell. Stuff that's, a little bit more, no, not competitive, just a little bit more as far as features and all that stuff. So we're going to be working on that, and it's got me excited a little bit to be something new to do. And I may make some money at it. That'd even be better.
Well, very cool. So they're at cows.com, it looks like. And,
yeah,
we'll look forward, to see the Evil Roy line come out.
And as of now, the date, or today, they doubt if they're going to have anything on there because we just hooked up about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we're just kind of trying to lay stuff out and get it up. But it won't be long before we'll have stuff up, definitely.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, Gene, thank you so much for coming on the program and sharing all your knowledge of the Henry rifles and history, and great time talking with you.
Well, I always enjoy it. Anytime you want me on, give me a call and we'll do it again.
Well, I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your Huckleberry. Why, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Fight's not with you, Holiday.
I beg to differ, sir. We started a game we never got to finish. Play for blood, remember?
I was just fooling about.
I wasn't. Say when. Show Johnny Ringo who's boss with Patriot Patch Company's Huckleberry Patch, a must-have for any range bag. Pre-order yours today at patriotpatch.co.
And also don't forget to head over to patriotpatch.co to pre-order your very own Firearms Radio Network t-shirt. And, if this goes well, we're going to be looking at producing a lot of other t-shirt designs, for different shows on the Firearms Radio Network, but also like different themed t-shirts, like, AR-15 themed or, you name it. So, if you guys can make this pre-order possible, it'll lead us to creating more awesome t-shirts as well for you guys down the road. So, patriotpatch.co, head on over there. Well, that was an awesome time talking with Evil Roy about the history of the Henry rifles. Again, big thank you to Gene for coming on the program. And yeah, we'll have him on again soon. Talk some more, maybe firearms histories. Stories about, history of the firearm. Tale of the gun, as you would say. Well, you can crowdfund this and every episode of Gun Guy Radio by heading on over to patreon.com/gun. You can pledge $1 or $5 of support per episode to keep Pro Gun Radio like this on the air. You can also head on over to patreon.com/FRN to support the Firearms Radio Network as a whole.
Gun Guy Radio says thank you and proudly displays artwork and graphics designed by Ryan Cross of Hunter of Design. hunterofdesign.com.
Well, that about wraps us up this week. Don't forget you can subscribe and listen to us on iTunes. Head on over there, leave us an iTunes review. And also, we're on all other podcatchers out there. Any smartphone you can find us on. Just look for a podcast app. And then once you download that podcast app, search for Gun Guy Radio or the Firearms Radio Network. And also, please consider joining the NRA and the Second Amendment Foundation. And don't forget to check out all the other awesome shows here on the Firearms Radio Network. That's a wrap, and we'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv. Freedom. How does one maintain freedom? That's a question our founding fathers pondered over 200 years ago. They believed the solution was in our Constitution and its amendments. We exercise the freedom of speech every day here at FRN, along with the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Preserving freedom. We believe the Second Amendment could possibly be that one amendment that protects all the rest. Help us to preserve America as a shining light on the hill. We do our part by providing entertainment and information that supports the Second Amendment every day. Preserving freedom. What do you believe? Get involved. Show your support at patreon.com/FRN.